Sending it to you now.
Okay. That's it. Yeah, my computer's really slow, but it does look like it's pulling it up.
Okay, just let me know when you're done.
You want to try the link on our website? My computer's not acting crazy lately. YouTube doesn't want to wait for me.
Give me one second. Yep, Tracy, it's live.
All right.
I'm putting them in.
Just since I'm always a little confused about what room we're in now, because I see Jennifer is not in this room. Is this a room just for the members right now?
No, everyone's coming back. It just takes some people longer than the other if they don't hit the button. So you are live on YouTube. The link has been posted. You're good to go.
Okay, so I could actually start the meeting. It is 10:01, but we had
Yes,
Jennifer a minute ago and
She's there. I see her
she's
coming in.
back.
she's coming back. Okay,
She's on.
she's on. All right, great. Okay, well, we'll start my first meeting as the chair. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Call to
Morning.
order a meeting of the Louisiana State Board of Medical Examiners Occupational Therapy Advisory Committee pursuant to lawful notice is duly convened and called to order at 10:01 a.m. Friday, January 24th, 2024 via Zoom virtual video. Please note, any comments by the public are welcome and can be emailed to publiccomment@lsbme.la.gov. Dr. Van, please confirm that you have verified the identity of all tele and video conference participants.
Yes, ma'am, we have.
Is the sound clear and audible to the public and those on the tele and video conference?
It is.
Okay. All additions to the executive or public agenda must be made presently, as we will no longer make additions to the agenda after the close of the public session. And we will be making one addition after I review the mission and we do the roll call. So to review the mission of OTAC is ultimately to protect the public. i.e. the consumers of occupational therapy, by regulating competent practice and upholding the standard set forth by the governing rules and regulations. Amy, no, see, I'm gonna be doing a roll call through the members. Members present are as follows: Amy LaRiviere, Kelly Brandon, Raylena Crook, Kim Solari, Kathleen Norcross, Carolyn Murphy, Glenn Wallace, and Ingrid Frank. Did I get all the members? If you're a member and I didn't say your name, please. All right, sounds like I got everybody. Amy, can we confirm that we have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Also present at the meeting is Dr. Vincent Collada, the LSBME Executive Director, Patricia Wilton, LSBME Executive Counsel, Lauren Suttereth, LSBME Attorney, Tracy Morrow, IT Specialist, I believe she was on.
Yes.
Jacinta Duhu, LSBME Executive Staff Officer. Have I missed somebody?
Think you got everybody.
Everybody. And we also have a guest, Jennifer Lucky, the Louisiana Occupational Therapy Association president. I'd like to start with approval of the minutes from our last meeting, and then we'll talk about adding the agenda item. I guess, should we put the minutes up from the last meeting and then just quickly scroll through?
Yes, 1 second. I got the wrong thing. Give me a minute. There you go. Can everybody see that?
Yes. If you could just scroll down a little bit more, Dr. Van, to the minutes, and just go through them slowly. So, what did we do last month? We did the minutes. We did the definition sections with the rules. We had an executive session. And then we went back to the rules, and talked about temporary license changing to temporary permit. We changed some of the rules regarding that, and then we voted on that and adjourned. Does anybody have any additions or changes they need to make or corrections? Okay, can I get a motion for approval of the minutes?
This is Raylena. I'll motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'm sorry, I didn't see who seconded.
Kim Solari.
Okay.
Any opposed? Any public comment? Dr. Van, any public comment?
I just want to make sure, did Miss Jennifer get in for the request that she wanted to make? And I don't see her in the meeting.
Is she not in the meeting? Because she was before.
I'm here. I'm in the meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Jennifer, the iPhone.
I gotcha. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure she got there. That's the only public comment we have.
All right. So we do need to make one addition to the public agenda that was published. And this late addition is an occupational therapist, April Payton, who has written and called the board to inquire about information regarding occupational therapists' ability to practice pelvic floor therapy in the state of Louisiana. And Dr. Van asked that this be added to our agenda for us to discuss and develop a response.
Do you need a motion and a unanimous vote?
Yeah, okay, so all in favor of adding this item to the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so this item will be added to the agenda after the presentation by Jennifer Lucky. And before we start talking about the remaining rules and regulation areas that we need to vote on. So the next item on our agenda then is to hear from Jennifer Lucky regarding dry needling. So I'll turn it over to you, Jennifer.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name's Jennifer. Let me make sure I'm off of mute. Okay. I'm Jennifer Lucky. I am the LOTA president. First off, I just want to thank all of y'all for the hard work that y'all have been doing to really put forward these rules and regs changes. I know that they've been overdue, and so I just can't thank y'all enough for all that y'all have done to push this forward. I know this has been a lot of hours and a huge commitment. With that being said, we've had a ton of reach out from practitioners about the issues with dry needling and trying to see if that can go ahead and get approval. We know that the language is there for the rules and the guidance. AOTA, that was one of the big issues, was getting their statement of support that came out in, I believe, April of 2023. We know the guidelines are in place. We did do a survey about for 5 days. We ran it to see for practitioners in the state their thoughts on dry needling, what they're seeing, the impact of not being able to use it versus being able to use it. Obviously, we got in just 5 days about 200 respondents. With, I would say, 90% of the respondents were in support for using dry needling. Other people didn't have comment because they didn't feel like it impacted their practice. Those who felt like it did not impact the area of practice that they were in, there were some, though, who still saw the value of it as OT practitioners. The concerns that practitioners have had is the longer that we are waiting to be able to use dry needling, we're losing clients because they're having to refer them out to physical therapists. We're not able to contribute to bodies of research of OT's value in using dry needling the longer that we're waiting on this. And then obviously the impact on the consumer, it is a valuable modality. We are seeing the research from other disciplines and how it can really be used and benefit the clients. So we're seeing those consumers who, like I said, are not able to get OT services, which maybe would provide more of a comprehensive care, more holistic needs, more occupation-based for those clients. And we're losing them to physical therapists because they're able to dry needle if that's something that the physicians are wanting and ordering. So our request at LOTA and from a vast majority of the OT practitioners is to look to see if what we can do to go ahead and push forward the rules and regs guidelines and get the approval for just the dry needling portion while y'all are still going through the process of approving the whole rules and regulation changes. I know it is a lengthy process. And so that was one of the things of seeing, is there any way that just that portion of the rules and regs can go ahead and get approval to be able to move forward so practitioners can use this modality?
I'll ask everybody else on the advisory committee. I personally don't have a problem with seeing if we could go to the board with just that part sooner rather than later, and representing occupational therapy in front of the board along with probably Jennifer or others who understand it better than I do. I don't know how anybody else on OTAC feels about that.
If that's a possibility, then I don't see any.
It would just be a matter then now, if nobody else on OTAC has a problem with that, then I guess we really need to bring this then to Dr. Van now, about just timing and whether that's feasible, Dr. Van, that we could kind of take just the dry needling rules changes and try to get onto the LSBME agenda.
Well, I think what I can do, I have to tell you that we're in the process of, we've got you about 18 rules ahead of you right this moment, okay? I don't know, first of all, tell me so I can give you an adequate evaluation. How long do you think it will take to finish your overall rule draft?
We were hopeful that the sections we're voting on today are actually going to finish it. However, Kelly Brandon did give us gave a lot of feedback that we also need to review, and I don't know if that will lead to us having to re-explore any areas. So I'm hopeful that we literally are going to be finishing today, but it might not be.
Well, what I was going to say to you, if you think you're going to finish by March, for example, at the March OTAC meeting, I think there's really not going to be any difference because you can combine them all and do it one time, because we are going to be, I anticipate, jumping the line on some other very important rules that have to be done in terms of fee increases. And I will tell you all that you are likely to get a 20% fee increase, licensing fee increase. But again, the key here is that the board has not made that decision, but as soon as the board makes that decision, if you all are still a distance away from finishing, we can incorporate the pelvic floor issue
This is dry
into
needling.
the dry needling issue into the fee increase, and then come back and bring the whole thing together and whenever you finish. My concern, though, is that understand that if we pass this and we put it in the sequence, it's going to be having to take the sequence. That the best I can do for you is add the update to dry needling into the fee increase for you all. And so here's where you're going to get, I want to advise you that there certainly will be some people who will oppose the fee increase. So if the rule is defeated, so possibly, that I think maybe you would lose the dry needling issue. But nonetheless, we'll do our best to keep it in as if we can. But again, understand there will be some people who will be opposed to the fee increase issue and may want to kill the whole rule. But we have to deal with that. So again, my suggestion to you is if you can finish by March, there really is not going to be any time differential because of the number of rules that are ahead of you. And Pat, if you think I'm wrong, please jump in and tell me.
No, I think you're absolutely correct. We have a very huge backlog of rules pending that we need to push out, and we're working as hard and fast as we can on that. I was going to suggest that the only avenue to jump the line, if you will, and it is if somehow this could be presented as an emergency rule. And I think it doesn't sound like it would constitute an emergency because there are alternative ways for patients and or clients to get these services, even if it's not from an OT. And this is more in line with ensuring that OTs can work to their highest, best faculties and maintain patient care for people who want this service. But if there were, for instance, some basis to say that the inability of OTs to have a rule permitting them to do this was causing some sort of urgent need in medical care or occupational therapy care, it could potentially be an emergency rule, but it would have to be justified. I'd have to have proof, some kind of be able to make a statement that there was some emergency associated with this. And that would give us 90 days initially, 120 days to promulgate the permanent rules.
Okay, it sounds to me like I do believe that we would be done with all of our rules changes by March. If for some reason it looks like that's gonna not happen, then after the fee increase gets passed, we could bring the dry needling up separately after the fee increase gets passed. If it looks like we're not gonna finish our other rules and regs by March. Am I kind of summarizing
Yeah.
that well?
Yes, and I will tell you, we're going to get hopefully an approval by the February board meeting to start the fee increase rules, and you will have a few weeks. So if you guys think you're going to finish in March, we can do it all, we can probably just combine y'all's all in one and do one thing, because the fee increase would probably be, I think, upheld, even though there'll be some people that oppose it. But nonetheless, I think I'm just telling you, we got all these rules ahead of you. Y'all have made a decision that we've all agreed to for months, that we would finish all the rules and do it. And at this late date, all I'm telling you is you may not find any benefit of trying to get in immediately, other than if, as Pat said, there is an urgent need in the healthcare community that is adversely affecting patients, that we have to provide this service. And if you can give us that data, we'll talk about the rule, as Pat said. But again, I think, understand we're sort of sequencing these rules on priorities and urgencies and anyway, and I think you all will find that we sort of had planned for you all to be finished. And if you finish in March, we'll put you in the queue. But again, if we want to tie it to the fee increase, I can do it that way too. But you tell us what you all want to do.
Jennifer, I do feel like we will be done by February. I mean, if we don't finish today, I think we will finish at our February meeting. So I'm not too.
Okay.
Sounds like we'll be on track to just bring it all at the same time.
Okay.
But we do understand the urgent need amongst the OT community to be able to perform.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah. And I think it's just having some idea of being able to tell practitioners from a timeline, because I think they were really hopeful after having obviously the letter from AOTA that the Board of Medical Examiners would feel good about going ahead and moving forward with that, and so looking at a year later was timeline and stuff. So was just an issue or concern to a lot of practitioners. So, but we can let them know that we're continuing to work on that.
And to be perfectly clear, this was the will of the advisory committee, and that's how we've been doing it. And I'm sorry that it seems to conflict with the LOTA.
So, well, thank y'all so much for your hard work.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks.
Okay. Do we have to do something about public comment? Do I need to ask for if there's any public comment?
I will check right now, and there are no public comments, ma'am.
Okay. All right, our next item then is our new agenda item. I guess you could scroll to the letter, Dr. Van, from the occupational therapy practitioner, April Payton.
Let's see if it made it on this agenda. No, this did not meet. Let me just put it up. I got it. Let me show it. I got it right here. Okay, so this is the letter. Let me share the right screen. Okay, this is the letter. Can everybody see that? Is it large enough for everybody to see?
I can see it.
Okay.
I had a phone call with Dr. Van yesterday, and I did talk to him briefly about some of the things that she pointed out about pelvic floor issues being part of bowel and bladder control training is part of activities of daily living. Sexual health and having a sexual relationship is part of a person's occupational being. But this particular OT is looking, her basic question in a separate email that Dr. Van had shared with me yesterday was looking for whether or not an occupational therapist is allowed to practice pelvic floor therapy in Louisiana. And I do know that we teach it here at the school and that OTs are practicing pelvic floor therapy. I don't know if anybody else has anything of their own experience with this.
Two questions I think we need to answer is it something that has been traditionally part of the core curriculum? If so, why is she needing to take a specialized course in it? Because that's what she says, she wants to take a specialized course in it. Maybe it's just to get better knowledge, I don't know. And the other thing would be, it would still have to be on the order of a physician. And if
Yes.
y'all are comfortable with that, I think that's something we can incorporate. We can advise her, but again, it's up to you all what you want to do.
I think I can't speak for what they're teaching in Monroe or in Shreveport, but we are teaching pelvic floor therapy with guest lecturers OTs who are specialized in that. And yet just kind of almost like if an occupational therapist finishes our program and then goes on to work in an outpatient orthopedic clinic with a lot of patients with rotator cuff tears, they would probably need to go take an additional course in how to manage rotator cuff tears. So no different, I would say that, if somebody graduated from our program and had a patient with pelvic floor issues, they should probably take an additional course, just in the same way that somebody who's working with patients with rotator cuff tears should also probably take an additional course. There's
Should
a
take
lot of
and
things
must take are two different things, and I want to be sure you understand.
Mhm.
I want to give you all a perspective of history that affected a board not related to us that currently is doing pelvic floor therapy, and that is the PT board. About 3 years ago, the PT board got called on the carpet because they had a couple of male PTs who decided to start doing pelvic floor therapy because it was something that is core curriculum for them now. But these guys were actually, as it turned out, never taught that in core curriculum because they did it. But they nonetheless started doing it, got in trouble, had accusations of sexual harassment, sexual abuse, and the PT board was called down very significantly on that. And I want to prevent us from getting called down on this as well. So I want to take every reasonable precaution to make sure that the people who were not taught this are required to take a course. And if it's not been something that they've done, it is strongly recently, though what they were taught, they should get a refresher course. Because I think you need to understand that as you move into this area and we have different sex between the therapist, even if you have the same sex with the therapist, and you A, don't have a chaperone, you place yourself at risk, and B, if there's any accusation, we want to make sure that the board requirements were at least sufficient to protect the public. So with that, y'all make a decision, and the board will review it ultimately and either accept, reject, or modify it.
We do teach it here in our program. We have somebody on faculty that is certified, so it is part of our curriculum.
I personally feel comfortable, Dr. Van, with just I guess reiterating to this OT that we operate only with a physician's referral. That she can't provide this without a physician's referral.
And I do think that is what set up the PTs, because as you know, PTs now have direct access. And I think that's why they got in trouble, because they didn't put it together properly. But I just want to make sure that we never know when direct access may come about for you all. So we want to make sure that we have something that says, if you were not taught, you need to take a course. If you haven't done this, you should get a refresher course, and the rest of it is going to be done on the order of a physician. And I'm even sure that we probably ought to say even evaluation shouldn't be done without the order of a physician in this particular arena, because of the heightened sensitivity in the world today about it.
I think personally, from my standpoint, whenever I was in school, better part of 10 years ago now, maybe it was something that was beginning to be taught and introduced, but I wouldn't say it was necessarily part of my, I don't remember having a, pelvic floor, like a pelvic floor, I would say adequate enough education in terms of all of the things that I think that it's developed into today, presently. So I do think that it would be good to have some kind of like additional requirement in the same sense that I view it as like, if somebody wants to become a certified hand therapist, there's contact hours that are needed. There's supervision that's possibly needed. There's additional courses, and there's all these other things that are needed before you're a certified hand therapist. Now, I don't think that I mean, this is outside of really my expertise, but as far as I know, that there's not a certified pelvic floor therapy designation that OTs can get. If I'm wrong, then tell me. But if there were, that seems the most appropriate course of action to say, like, if you're going to practice, not that you can't do hand therapy and not be a certified hand therapist, but it could be an additional thing that like we not like require, but encourage. I don't know. Just because it wasn't part of my curriculum, if I were to go into this area of practice, there would be continuing education there would be a lot of continuing education that's needed, a lot of also a lot of modality training that would be needed depending on like whatever you're doing to do the therapy. So I don't know. I feel like it's completely within our scope of practice, but I also feel that like there could be concerns for like older practitioners who it wasn't part of their core curriculum, who just assumed that they could step into this because it's a current quote unquote like emergingly popular I guess like area of practice.
I don't have a problem if we want to create some language like that for our rules about that, but we do have it in our rules already that each individual occupational therapy practitioner is professionally responsible for being competent in the areas that they practice in. And I wouldn't want to stop this particular OT from doing pelvic floor therapy. And she's intending on taking continuing education, and I feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, but by me saying what I was saying, I wasn't necessarily disagreeing with anything that you just said or with what she's saying. I guess it was just, if I was just personally speaking, like if I was like, well, I'm not going to work in mental health today and tomorrow, God put the desire in my heart to start working in pelvic floor therapy, I would not be adequately prepared to do so. So I would need to make sure that, yeah, like what you said, just to be professionally competent and responsible to make sure that I cover my own bases to fulfill the rules and regulations, like you said.
Yeah.
That was kind of just where I was coming from.
Does that sound okay, Dr. Van, if in your response, or do you want?
Why don't you draft the response, Pat, and I'll go over it, modify it if it needs to be sent, and we'll send it out. How's that?
We'll do that. Let me just write it down, because otherwise, if it doesn't go on my to-do list, it doesn't happen.
I clearly understand.
All right, do we have anybody else have anything to add about the pelvic floor therapy?
Patricia has her hand up.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, you answered the question that I was going to raise, which is to say, this isn't a rule. This is giving an advisory response to this particular lady about her particular situation. But obviously, it's going to be something published. It's going to be accessible to the public. So I was wanting to make sure that I understood what you all were saying, and I believe that I do, is that while we say to her, in general, yes, it appears, that she could do this. We'll have a paragraph in the letter that says, generally speaking, it's within the core curriculum for many OTs, if not all, and anyone undertaking this should ensure their competence, et cetera, something like that. I mean, you don't have a rule that requires it, but when we do these advisory opinions, we're really telling people, we're trying to subliminally get in some information about best practices for everybody, not just answering her question. So that's what I wanted to double check.
Okay, very good. No, that gives me some guidance. Thank you.
Yeah, I just Googled that, what she was asking about, where she's wanting to get her certification. It's very expensive. It's $2,500 and it's $900 to take the exam. So she's wanting to dot her I's and cross her T's before she checks out that kind of money. So
Yeah,
I don't blame her.
Are there any public comments for this item, Dr. Van?
no, ma'am, there are no public comments at this time.
Okay. Then we are moving on to our next agenda item, which is to look at the rules and the rules, 3 rules sections that we had after Darby and I went through the rules together. I don't know, 6 weeks ago, I can't remember now when we did it. We came across 3 sections that we felt like we had not actually voted on. So one is about the makeup of the OTAC committee. Another has to do with how we elect chairs of OTAC. And the finally is about documentation of supervision of an OT assistant. Unfortunately, I'm realizing, Amy, I did not email you the actual document to write on, so I'll probably share the screen with mine and just type it like I usually do, like I always have. Let's see if I can share the screen. Yes, I can. All right, I gotta find the right thing. OT rules with revisions. This one. Okay, so the first thing we need to look at is section 1959. I've got that, I can find that on page 8. That's 8.
What's the first number we're doing? 19 what?
1959.
59.
I guess these page numbers are off because I'm using a different version. Okay, composition of OTAC. We might. Where did it go? Here we go. Here's the question mark that we had at some point during various discussions. It must have come up whether we still wanted to include gerontology or geriatrics versus instead having a member who practices in community practice or wellness. And so that's why I'm bringing it back up again, even though we've voted in general on this in the past. We had this question mark that came up at some point in all of our different meetings. Our current one is gerontology. Do we want to keep that, or is that something that we would rather change to preferably having an OTAC member who works in the community practice or wellness realm? anybody have an opinion about it?
Is it possible to have both if it says 9 members? And then we have work programs it's taken off? Or
You're right. Why do we we only have 9, we only have 8 areas on here. And we're supposed to have 9, right?
I
Yeah.
believe so.
Maybe that's where the whole problem came in. Simply that this was supposed to be community practice and the other one was supposed to remain geriatrics. Could it be that simple?
Good job, Kelly. Nice. I'm trying to see what the catch is, but I think that would work.
Would the correct term be geriatrics as opposed to gerontology?
I think so.
Me too.
I agree.
Okay, so let me just, so actually, geriatrics was already there, so I'm gonna put that back to black. Well, I guess we're technically changing it from gerontology to geriatrics. Okay. Well, let's vote on this change. I'd rather just vote on each change as we go. I know that's kind of awkward, but it's just, it'll be easier for me for changing things. So can I get somebody to motion for the addition of community practice wellness as our 9th practice area or desired practice area for OTAC membership?
I make a motion for community practice and wellness to be the 9th area of practice, desired area of practice.
And someone to second it?
I'll second it, Carolyn.
All in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and any public comment, Dr. Van? Also not. Okay. Y'all, let me just do my file save as real quick so that I don't get myself in trouble. Oh, this is. Okay. Very good. Okay, now we're going to move on to section 1959D. It kind of came up when Darby and I became co-chairs last year, and even when Darby was leaving, that we really don't have any process written for how we elect chairs or co-chairs. And so we felt like we should have something in the rules that talks a little bit about how that process happens. Should we have it where there's if there's that should we have an actual board election, for example, to formally, even if we only have one person who's willing to do it and only have one nominee, is that, you know, should we have a board election? I personally kind of feel like we should, but I'll hear from everybody else.
How are you selected at this point?
There was really no process. It was sort of who kind of wants to do it.
Raise your hand and volunteer. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I
legal-
suspected.
Yeah, legally you don't have to, and it doesn't have to be a rule. It can, because it's an internal practice, it's not subject to rule promulgation because it's your internal practice. So it's whatever your choice is.
Oh, and that's another option. If we don't have to have it as a rule, maybe we create just sort of our own best practices. But does anybody have an opinion about it one way or the other?
I'm just gonna read through it real quick.
And you're just talking about how the chairs are appointed, right? Not the board. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Not the members.
I mean, would we say, just add a statement saying that from the board members, a chair of the committee will be selected or something like that?
I love that.
I don't know if that's sufficient, but,
Yeah, you can say something like the members shall select from among themselves a chair and any other officers desired. Like if you want to have a secretary or a vice chair. Oops.
Did I write it grammatically correct? Or is that confusing? From the OTAC members, a chair and any other desired officers will be selected. Or I guess it should be a chair and any other desired officers will be selected from the OTAC members.
Well,
the
they already
members.
said that.
Yeah.
I know, I feel like I've got it switch-watched the wrong way. Like I should start the sentence, a chair and other desired officers will be selected from the OTAC members.
Well,
Does
just
that
say, or you could say, be a little even more direct, just say OTAC members will select a chair and any other desired officers.
Okay, great. OTAC members will select a chair and any other desired officers. Does that sound okay, y'all?
Yes.
I think that sounds good.
Okay. We're gonna go through it again, with a vote. Could I get someone to motion this change to section 1959D on selection of chair and other officers?
I will, Amy.
Okay, and someone to second it?
Second motion.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
That was
Any-
Kim that's still.
Say it again, Amy.
No, it was somebody else that seconded it.
I missed it. I'm sorry. I'm new at taking notes, y'all.
I seconded it.
Okay.
And any opposed? Any public comment, Dr. Van? We'll assume not.
Checking right now. Just give me a second. I'm pulling it
Uh-huh.
up. All right. And no, ma'am, there is no public comment.
Okay, great. All right, moving on to the next section, 4927, documentation of OTA supervision. Somewhere around page 21. See specifically section 4927. Okay, here we go. It's the red stuff in the. So let's remind ourselves of what we have here. The LSBME verification of supervision form is what we have highlighted, because I'm not sure we ever really settled on that. And also Darby and I discovered that we had never actually voted on this wording that we have in B and C. Even though I know we all kind of verbally agreed to it, we never voted on it. So I guess just read through that, everybody, and then we'll talk about it.
I'm not sure about A.
Yeah, we had a lot of discussion about the verification of supervision form because with OTs and OTAs moving around a lot and the constantly I guess sort of we talked about the liability of an OT who's the supervising therapist on one of the verification forms, and then that OT leaves that job, has nothing to do with that OT assistant anymore, but yet is still on a verification form as supervisor.
I mean, I understand why. I just don't understand the wording, I guess.
Mhm.
Um,
But that was just our discussion. In the end, I believe Patricia Wilton felt we should keep the verification and supervision form. Is that correct, Patricia? That you felt like it was of your opinion that this is something we should maintain?
Yes, because there's a push for transparency for clients and patients to be able to know who is involved in their care across disciplines. So I think it's a good idea.
Okay. So we do want to keep the LSBME verification and supervision form. Is that something that needs to be in our rules? It was previously not actually, even though the board requires it for a licensure and for an OTA to get licensed and for an OTA to renew their license, it was never in our rules. Do we need to have it in our rules?
Yeah, CODA.
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, just as a CODA, I worked so many disciplines at one time in my practicing as a CODA. Which form do you want? Do you want my form with pediatricians when I'm working with kids, or do you want my form when I'm working with geriatrics? Where does it stop? How many forms would I have to send in? That would get, to me, if that stays in the rule, I would just be doing a bunch of paperwork, even if I have a million jobs.
Well, I'm glad you're here, Kathleen, because we needed an OT assistant point of view. But right now, when you renew, don't you just send in one renewal form with just one OT on it?
Yep, because I usually do like my main job, but I mean, it would be very frustrating if this is in there and I were, overthinking it and I would read it. I would actually think, oh God, I have to send all of these in and I'm doing a million jobs. I'm not going to want to send in 10 million different pieces of paper. So I just feel like, in my personal opinion, it's unnecessary to even have it in the rules.
Okay.
Because no matter where I am, someone's above me working, whether it be the OT that stays there for 20 years or the OT that stays there for a year and changes every year. They're always going to be watching me. I mean, or they probably shouldn't be practicing.
Here's the deal. I think Ingrid's been in this situation. I've been in this situation where somebody that's working under you and you have to sign that initial verification form, and then you no longer work there, or they no longer work there. As an OT, my name remains on it and could be, responsible for that CODA. So, I mean, I get the purpose of it, and honestly, I understand that it might be extra work, but I think protection for you would be good. And it would relieve the supervising, that's on record therapist from any liability from CODAs that they have no relationship with in terms of working or supervision.
But I'm gonna just ask Patricia from a rules point of view. Does this have to be in our rules, or can you separately can this form separately be required as part of OTA licensure without it being in our rules?
I defer to Dr. Van, but I believe that your rules encompass the requirement that any applicant comply with, fill out the forms and provide the documentation requested. So if it were requested as part of the application on that form somewhere or renewal, as opposed to it being in this rule, I think that would suffice, because it still wouldn't progress further without that documentation being provided. But I'll let Dr. Van say if he thinks I'm wrong.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So it was my understanding that there was a separate form for OTAs a long time ago, like 10 years ago. I don't even remember now. And then it went away. Like that supervision form was no longer required, that separate form. Like they didn't have to do that anymore. Now, I don't know if it's on the application itself that says, because I don't get to see the application and what it looks like for an OTA. But it's my understanding that supervision form isn't even on the website anymore.
It really more is the documentation that we need to be able to find that this person was properly supervised. If there's an accusation, for example, in a complaint that somebody says, I don't think I got proper care, we would go immediately to who did it. We would ask if there was an OTA that did it, who's your supervisor. We'd go to the supervisor. The supervisor says, I stopped supervising that person 2 years ago. Where's your documentation? So the issue is investigations, if they have to do it, is going to be looking for how the relationship and supervising work was being carried out between the OT and the OTA. Now, I think it's to your betterment for the population of OTs to know what the expectation is, because all I can tell you is if we start getting complaints, then we're going to come back and edit the rule and say it's got to be there. So I think what you have to look at is what is the intent, what is the need, and what does it bring to the table to make sure that patient care is proper. And I realize that many of us are hustlers and they have a lot of side jobs and, those kind of side hustles. And I think the key here is it's important to be able to document. And we say this to our PAs, for example. If you're working in Dr. Collada's office as a GYN PA and you are taught to do X, Y, and Z under Dr. Collada's supervision, and you decide to moonlight in the emergency room, all of those skills cannot be used on those patients, because you really have to have a new supervising physician for the skills that you do use in the emergency room, such as put in a chest tube. The gynecologic skills, like doing an endometrial biopsy, may not be able to be supervised by the person who's supervising you in the emergency room. So I think it's best to make it clear if you have an expectation. If you don't, and time brings on complaints and it looks like it would, the board will superimpose it upon you. So I think you ought to write it now to make sure you write it like you want.
Kathleen, can I just ask you, my impression was that the verification supervision form is still being used every year when an OTA renews their license. Am I right?
Ms.
Yeah,
Phyllis,
and the main job. I don't work a million jobs anymore because I'm getting older and I have a kid now. So I just put whatever main job I had was the one that I always put in for it.
But every year when you renew your license, you send in the verification of supervision form with the name of an OT on it.
Correct. Wherever my main job is, yes.
Yeah, wherever your main job is. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, so I'm Kelly, I'm not sure where you got that impression, because it is still on the website and I think it is still in use and has been.
Okay. Where is that? Is that something that you had to do initially before you got your license, to send in who was supervising you?
OTAs have to get it when they initially get their license and every year when they renew.
I'm sorry.
I don't remember when I got my license because that's been too many years ago, but every year I just have to put in who my main OT is. I only have one job now, so it doesn't matter, but I just put in whatever OT is supervising above me.
And that's a separate form that comes with, where is it on the website? I guess is what I'm trying, because it used to be very visible where, and it said, so if a graduate was going to get their initial license, but they didn't have a job yet, what do? They just wait until they get the job? Can they still get their license? Because it used to be really visible and now I don't even see it anymore, but I guess
It's mostly all accessible through the portal, but Miss Johnson is on and she can help us out. Miss Johnson, you want to address that question, please?
Yes. I was looking on the website. I don't see it. Under the supervisor before me, early on she was collecting those forms, and then I don't know what happened, but she stopped because it seemed to have been like of no point, kind of useless.
that was
And I come across uh that form, somebody submits that form, and it reaches me maybe twice a year, if that, you know. So I'm really not seeing those forms.
That's my impression, that it used to be done, it used to be required, and then it was taken down, and because nobody was really doing it, and like you said, it wasn't accurate anyway. And so I haven't even really talked about it with my students because it wasn't there anymore. So Kathleen, how do you get it?
I get it whenever I put in for my renewal, it asks me some questions. That's
Okay,
where
so
I put
it's not like a separate form, it's just a question on your renewal application.
It is, and you can upload the form at that time if you want to do so, but if it's the same, you don't have to.
But where's the form?
She's saying she don't even have the form.
I
There's no
filled out a form. I've just put it in on the portal.
Right.
Yeah,
And
it's on the renewal
and
application.
if somebody wants the form, they can get it through the renewal application process. And if they have, for example, if they have a change, they can change the form. So again, it's now embedded in the renewal process through the portal. And if you're not in a renewal process, you have to go to the portal, and we're updating all of those to make sure that they're there. But I'm pretty sure Alan has done this one already, but I can follow up for you at the next meeting. We're trying to get away from paper as much as possible, and everything can be done with your portal to get your license updated. So let's say, for example, in mid-year, you're a supervisor and you decide that this person you don't want to supervise anymore, you can go in mid-year and remove them as somebody you supervise. Because what you don't want to have done to you is be caught in a situation where you've been accused of improper supervision because your name's on a form that you are no longer supervising. So that's why we're trying to set this up so you can do it mid-year anytime, and it's all done through the portal.
And Dr. Van, is Patricia still on, or did you have to leave?
She's still here.
I'm still here. I'll just catch up with.
I mean, that was this whole issue of the fact that one person gets on the form, but so many different OTs are supervising them. That's why we created letter B here. That the OTA would include the name of the OT who is readily available and supervising them on that day for that therapy session, and they would have to include that OT's name on their note. And
that's fine too.
I mean, to me, that's actually more secure and less and more accurate than one form or a piece of a renewal annually that a name goes on, once a year.
I mean, and if I'm understanding this incorrectly, please tell me. But then C says below it, they're not required to have their document co-signed.
That's right.
But my opinion, if I'm working under this OT, that co-sign is just reiterating that they're working with me. It's basically instilling B. So I think they do need to co-sign so that they would.
I think if you individually would feel better having an OT co-sign your notes, that'd be fine. Unlicensed personnel like students have to have all their documentation signed, but I don't think I don't want to make this more onerous for OTs and OTAs, to have to co-sign every OTA note.
I don't
But
remember.
we do
I don't,
want the OTA to identify who is the OT that they knew that they were able to get in touch with that day for that session and put that therapist's name into the note. We got that language from Texas. That's what they do in Texas.
because if I remember correctly, I haven't seen home health patients in a long time. I think when we went through the document, it would ask us if it was a checkbox system that I used. It would ask like, what OT did you work with today? And that's where you put their name in for that. In the hospital setting that I work with now, they do co-sign all of our notes, but the system is set up that way.
Yeah, that's fine if anybody wants to do that. We're just talking about like from the rules point of view. And it sounds like the private sector has already sort of incorporated methods of demonstrating supervision of the OTA and building it into their documentation, which is awesome. But I mean, we'll keep the verification of supervision form, I guess. If Dr. Van and Patricia really feel like it's important, I personally do not feel like that is the best way of making sure an OTA is supervised for each session. I feel like we've kind of covered it with the language in letter B.
I'm still confused. There is a form or there's not a form?
It's not a separate form. It's built into the renewal application. For
Okay.
next year.
Okay, so is there a way for an OT to actually take their name off of it?
I'm not
Yes.
sure that, okay.
Okay,
Yes.
how do they do that? I haven't seen that.
Okay. Again, it's being in all of our license classes that have supervision, it's being built into the portal system. So you access it through the portal and you can amend the things in your application. And that way, for example, if I'm supervising PA Jones and PA Jones, I find out is suddenly not qualified to do what they want to do or decides to leave my employ and go work somewhere else. She leaves my employ. Well, I don't want to be stuck on there as the supervising physician for that PA. I go into my portal and take her name off of my list of PAs that I supervise. And that is similarly what's supposed to be going on. And like I said, if it's not up to speed at this moment, it will soon be, and I will verify that and bring you back a report at the next meeting.
So does the OT have to put the OTA's name in for that to happen, or when the OTA puts the OT's name in, it automatically links somehow to the OT's portal?
Well, at this point in time, we would expect the OT who's supervising to list who they supervise, and we would expect the OTA, whatever supervisors they're using, to use them. But again, if you choose not to do anything, it's just a question of we're trying to find out what's the responsible party for the action of the OTA if there is a problem. And that's the key to what we have to do to protect the public.
And that's where I feel like the daily note is more accurate than something that got turned in upon license renewal.
Look, it would be much easier for me to take that whole thing out of the thing. If you want to change the system, that's fine with me. And if the board approves it, it's easy for us. It's less programming overhead for us. But again, you tell us what you want and we'll put it. Remember, these are new rules. These are not the old rules. So we're changing the system to reflect the old rules. But as soon as you put this in and it gets passed, it's going to be the new rules and we will change the system to accommodate them.
I've just never seen that option to put in an OTA.
Kim has her hand raised.
Yes, I have a question. So let's say an OT goes in and removes himself as the CODA supervisor. Is the CODA somehow going to be notified of that in case that OT chooses not to go? Personally tell that CODA that, because you would hate a CODA just to assume that, yeah.
I can't imagine that kind of communication would not have taken place before the decision was made to remove.
I'm just trying to play devil's advocate.
Well, but again, I'm playing devil's advocate. You're telling me that really there's no supervision to begin with. Why should I have to even put their name down? Because they wouldn't even know I took them off. And that's where I think the current rules have an expectation. You are writing new rules. You're going to set new expectations. So how we've done it in the past is not as important to this discussion as to what you want for the future. and we will implement what you want. But if you're telling me that as a current practice, the communication between supervisors and coders is so bad that they don't even know when they don't work together anymore, that may be a bigger problem that you all have to address in the new rules.
I don't necessarily think it's that. I think it's the fact, like Kathleen was saying too, that you could have multiple supervisors. You know, you could be, because an OT can supervise several different OTAs, and OTA can be supervised by several different OTs. And it's, you know, depending on the patient, like Kathleen was saying, she puts one person down. So it's not necessarily that it's not going on. It's just who they chose to do that, I guess, to put on a form for legal reasons.
And again, I think you have to reflect that there are multiple types of practice out there. You still have maybe a one person OT entity, independent OT that employs two OTAs. Or you may have two OTs that employ 4 OTAs because they're a little bit bigger business. And then you have people that work at a big system like Ochsner that they might have 4 or 5 OTAs and 4 or 5 OTs and 20 OTAs. And I understand that. And we have 2 options in A and B that you are proposing for the future. I think individual cases will dictate how you do it. And we want to recognize that there are differences in practice, and you're writing the rules for all kinds of OT, OTA practice and interaction. So I think that's what you all did when you put the first draft together here with A and B. A might be for the person with, I'm in Mamou, Louisiana. I'm the only OT in Mamou, and I employ 1 OTA, and we do all the OT work for Mamou. But maybe if you're working in Lafayette, you might have a 2-man group, and you have your popular 2-man group, 2-person group. Excuse me for being insensitive. And that person is then they may choose to employ 3 OTAs. So now you have 2 OTs and 3 OTAs, and so they have a different arrangement. But again, if you're telling me that you all are actually taking yourself on and putting yourself off without even a discussion with the OTA, we got a bigger problem we got to address. And so that's very concerning to me. But I think we A and B are fine for the certain situations as we understand them.
Right. We're not saying that, Dr. Van. I guess we're circling back to, do we keep both? Do we keep the annual verification of supervision form and our new language that the OTA must include the name of the OT who supervised them for that session?
Well, you
or
can
can
preface
we eliminate the annual verification of supervision form because we are now having the OTA identify the supervising OT for each session that they've done?
Again, I think what you ought to say is A is the rule, and in lieu of A, you can do B. Okay, because they're not going to be situations that are the same. But you can take B, you can take A, whatever you choose. The board will make the decision finally. But again, my suggestion is recognize that there's more than one way that OTs and OTAs interact. And Ms. Kay talked to us earlier. There was a time in her youth she worked for lots of different people, and now she doesn't. And I think that reflects the reality of how work is done in Louisiana and around the world, the United States, quite frankly. So again, I think you all make the rule recommendations, and the board will take them under advisement and decide what to do with them. But I'm perfectly comfortable if you said A, or in lieu of A, you must do B, then you're fine.
So what purpose does A serve if you have B? I guess that's my question. I didn't mean to jump ahead of you, Raylene. I see you have your hand up, but that's my question is, what purpose does A serve if you have B?
Exactly.
Well, and again, that would be in a situation where it's a 1-man group and they have it's a 1-person OT office with 2 OTAs, and that's all they're working on, and they all stay together and they're not working anywhere else. And that way they don't have to have all these countersigns and like the hospitals do this countersign work because it is a liability, a risk prevention method so that they know who's doing what. In a situation like that, in the 1 or 2 person situation we're talking about, you don't necessarily need that because that's the only place you're employed. That's the only person that you work for. And that's the only people that you employ to work for you. So it's not a problem in a
But
hospital environment.
aren't you still going to be putting the name of the person on every chart?
Well, I mean, it could, again, there is a certain assumption that's based on if you're in, for example, if you're in Van Collada's OT practice and I have OTA Smith working for me, then there's not going to be any other OTA that's going to be doing it.
But Dr. Mann, it's not going to be onerous for an OTA to simply include the name of the OT that's supervising them in their note, even if they're just putting that same name every day, because
That's
it's
fine. I'm
them and
happy.
another
I'm just
OT.
trying to make it easy for the smaller groups. But y'all want, is this what you want?
I don't know if
Again,
Kathleen would consider that onerous, but I can ask her, like, if you had to include the name of the OT in your note, even if it was the same OT day after day. Kathleen,
you're muted.
Putting every day that I do a note, in the hospital setting, the OT has to sign off on it. But in the home health setting, every day that I do a note, I have to put the OT that is monitoring me.
okay. And it wouldn't matter. Does that feel onerous to you that if you have the same OT who's monitoring you session after session after session, so you just keep putting down Jane, I mean, is that onerous or that's okay or what?
I mean, it's fine for me to feel confident that whoever's, looking after me, supervising me, that it's fine for me to put them down every day because they're the ones that I'm communicating with, I mean, when I was home health, I communicated with my OT every day, all day. And I did home health for quite a long time. And the hospital setting is the same way. If I have a problem or if I just want to talk about their care, we talk about their care every single day. Maybe not in the acute care setting, which is that I don't go to often, but I do rehab in the hospital. So I do talk to that OT every day.
I just feel like if we have B, we don't need A.
Correct.
Brenda and Kelly both have their hands raised.
I agree. Because no matter what setting I'm in, if I'm seeing kids or I'm seeing geriatrics or I'm working in the work setting, no matter what, if I'm doing a note, because I'm a CODA, I'm always putting down who is supervising me in that setting. So A is actually, it doesn't matter. Because like I said before, if I'm working a bunch of jobs, I'm only putting down the main job anyways. A means nothing because A only shows one OT that's supervising me. But B is showing all of the OTs that are supervising me if you go pull a note.
Whatever you want, I'm happy with.
How about you, Patricia? Does it feel right if we eliminate A and go with B?
Yeah, I mean, I will say it's a bit counter to what the trend that we're trying to do with the NPs and the PAs, but I think in this particular circumstance, B gives the paper trail, gives the accountability, and if there had to be an investigation that goes up the line as far as who would be the responsible OT in the event of an adverse occurrence, I don't know that I see what work A does that B doesn't cover.
Right. I think B would be better at it than A.
And Raylena and Kelly both have their hand up.
So really quick, and this probably maybe a moot point at this point, but I'm concerned about two words in the language of A. Number one is form, and the other one is faxed. Both of those terms are slightly archaic in the grand scheme of things. I agree with the recent conversation about when you complete B, it kind of makes A null and void to an aspect. If something happens with a patient, the first place you're going to go anyways is the documentation. So if it's documented there, then I think from a liability perspective that's covered. But in order to satisfy both easily, can we just, and it may be there now, again, I'm not a CODA and I don't supervise a CODA currently, but can't we have a box when they renew their license that says I verify that I've done this, kind of similar to the box that we check as far as I've completed my CEUs. We're going on word of grace at this point. If further documentation is needed, then we can reference, you know, the validation that's completed in B. Does it have to be a hard concrete form that is faxed or sent in? Why can't we just put a verification box is my question. Would that be enough?
A box where they verify that they are practicing under the supervision of an occupational therapist at all times without actually mentioning the name.
Correct. And then, and that may be in existence now, I don't know.
It isn't, but it's a great idea. We're happy to do it.
Okay, I think
Yeah,
that would
that's, yeah.
eliminate the form faxed concept, and it would validate that they're aware of the rule, which I'm not saying they aren't, but just in case they're aware of it and they're doing it.
Did someone else have their hand raised? I'm terrible at things like that, y'all.
Kelly. Kelly, did you?
Well, my comment or question was really the same. I'm still trying to figure out what the process is currently. If there is just a box on the initial application and on the renewal that says, yes, I'm supervised, or is there a place where they put in who's supervising them on the initial application and the renewal? And
Ms. Kelly, I don't mean to interrupt you. I tried to address that earlier.
I know,
I,
but I still
I
don't
will
understand.
pull it. I will do the research and respond to that question at the very next meeting. It's
Okay.
my understanding it is in process and being done. And I don't know if they got down the list to you all already or not, but I will find out and give you that answer at the next meeting.
Okay, that's fine. I was hearing a couple of different things. Like, so it's my understanding the last few years that it really hasn't been done as according to what Ms. Phyllis was saying. So I think that B would be the best. I mean, I like your idea about just a checkbox saying, yes, I'm being supervised, and not necessarily putting a name, and then just doing B.
Yeah.
Because like I said, the initial application, they might not have a job.
Right. So
Maybe on the box, can it say, I'm being supervised, and I will include that supervisor's name in every note? And
Yeah.
they check
Why don't we
that
just
off.
say,
that's
why
another
don't we
great,
just,
oh, I love that, Amy.
Yeah, I do too.
we do, well, that's an our side language problem. This is, you put the rule of what you want the rule to say,
Okay.
and we're going to put a language in there that says, based, when this rule passes, that we're going to amend that license application to say that I always work under the supervision of a CODA, I mean, of a OT, as specified in section 4927, whatever paragraph B becomes in the future.
Okay, so I'm going to eliminate A, and A is now
Yes.
this. I'm going to eliminate the words Texas, even though we totally plagiarized from them. And now please just reread A and B, and C and D, because that's what we're about to vote on.
So my question about B is, why do we have a rule that says they're not required to have their documentation
And
co-signed?
we don't have to
have
have
a
that
rule that says they do.
It just comes up a lot as a question. And
I like
so it just, that's why I think we threw that in there. But if you think that's not something we ought to do, I think, you know, you're more of the legal person than we are. It's just that it comes up as a question.
Yeah, I mean, it's just weird to have a rule that says what you don't have to do.
What if it says something like required co-signatures are like determined by facility, payer source, or whatever, and not, you know, kind of taking it off the boards? Because it comes up all the time.
Well, wait a minute. One thing is co-signing, and
another is
we're
just
gonna, yeah, and I think that you need to get away from the payment issue and do what is the best for the public here. It's not about the businesses that utilize our licensees. So if you don't think it's necessary for the public to have that, that's fine. We don't need it.
Well, or if you want, if you feel it's important to put that in there, then I would suggest moving it to A and putting it after the first sentence, who is readily available to answer questions at the time of provision of services. Co-signing of OTA documentation is not required, or something like that.
Got it.
And again, that comes back to, if anybody ever asks us, it's not required, but just because you don't have to doesn't mean you shouldn't in the right circumstances. Or if the employer requires it.
Okay, so can we vote on this section?
Yeah. Has everyone read them? Everyone's ready? Okay. What's my, can I get a motion to
Wait,
approve?
let me ask you something real quick. We're talking about in C, mutual obligations of a supervising occupational therapist. Is that a defined term, supervising occupational therapist? And if not, I would change it to the supervising occupational therapist.
Oh, and I have one more question.
Okay, we don't have the term supervising occupational therapist in our definitions.
Okay.
So what was your?
You might want to turn it, you might want to consider, you might want to consider adding a definition and linking it to that section. The supervising occupational therapist is the person referred to in 4927A or something like. I mean, we would make it make more sense than that, but
Okay.
if we don't know what a supervising occupational therapist is, whoever signs the chart is, I mean, whoever the OTA puts on in the notes is the supervising physician.
Okay. So and someone else had a question?
I did. The purple that's now B, documentation of the client care conference will be recorded by the OT. Is that just like a monthly thing that they would do?
Client care conference?
And that would be documentation of the client. It's right underneath that red that we're.
No, I know, but I mean, we've
discussed it. We discussed it as being as often as appropriate where there's a change in condition or change in plan. We didn't say monthly. As often as needed to reflect the current condition and plan of the patient.
Oh, okay.
What we talked about in the back.
Yeah.
In the past, that's what we've talked about.
Yeah, he's right.
So, okay, I was just looking at the supervision part, and I thought it said maybe it just said at least monthly. I'm trying to find it. Supervision.
Yeah, it's right here on page 24. The client care conference can be conducted using a variety of types and methods of supervision. The frequency, methods, and content may vary by practices dependent on a bunch of things, et cetera. So.
Okay, so it just says general supervision shall consist of a client care conference at least monthly for each individual. So it just doesn't have to be
a minimum standard, right?
So at least monthly. So it doesn't have to be in the OTAs, just the OTs.
That's what we had decided on in the past. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just checking.
And just so you know, when I do the final run through, I'm going to change that to active instead of passive and say the OT shall document the client care conference in the client's medical record.
Okay.
And just procedurally, so everybody gets it and doesn't think what's going to happen is Pat's going to start this, and then she's going to have a question about the medical issues, and Pat and I'll address those. And then if we can't address it, we're going to call Ingrid and get her input, so that what we're going to bring to you back is the final draft that you're going to have to either, and of course, we appreciate any corrections of typos and that kind of thing, but there should be no substantive changes at that point, because it's what you all have all voted on. But if we get a tense wrong, if we get a comma out of place, we appreciate those criticisms. But at that point, you're going to approve the document, and then we'll bring it to the board. So I want to make sure you understand there's a lot of change to APA language that Pat's going to correct, questions of medical issues. If I can't answer them, we're going to involve Ingrid, and then we're going to bring you back that document that we've all put together that reflects the will of this committee. And then I would hope that you would not decide to change any of the substantive issues, because then we got to start all over again.
Yes, we're not going to do that.
So
Okay.
if I understand correctly, there's no direct, like, face-to-face supervision required for any licensed OTA?
There is.
I mean,
think
that
we
was
kind of
on
left that up to the
Yeah.
OT.
Okay, but nothing, like, because I'm just going back to how it used to be, and it was very specific about that, but now there's not.
Well, I think given the
Unless they
advent
need
of
it.
Zoom and other things, I think we recognize, but I think the judgment is going to be, we're going to trust that licensee to do what is best for that patient in that case. Now,
Right.
and then if there's a complaint, we may have to come to people like you, Kelly, and say, was this the right thing to do, or should this have been done in person? And that's where we get to the expertise and the criticism of the improper practice. And so you can't write a rule for every situation, but I
Right.
do think we ought to trust our licensees and say it has to be the system that is best for the client and the situation about that client.
Okay. I'm just making sure, because we went from 1 year needing 25% direct and to 2 years, 10%, and now none. That
We
it's
are trying to
required.
make it easy.
I know it's still in their judgment. I'm just saying it used to be specific, and that's going to be a
Kelly,
big change.
I
It's
don't
gonna
know
be
if you
a
missed
big
the meetings where we talked about all of this, Kelly, but yeah, we
I did miss it, and I'm so
you must have,
sorry.
because we've already covered all of that.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
Okay.
Okay, we're good.
Can I get then a motion to accept the changes to section 4927 A, B, and C?
This
I
is
make a
really
motion.
Oh, maybe I'll second.
And just so you know, Madam Chair, there has been no public comment before you vote.
All right. So I think, Amy, were you able to get both the person who motioned and seconded?
I second.
Yes, I thought I had Carolyn motion, second Raylina.
So all in favor of the changes to section 4927 A, B, and C, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And Dr. Van already confirmed there was no public comment. So I'm going to move this to green. Yay. Why those letters didn't turn green, I don't know. And then let me say that. Okay, the last thing was just to kind of go through some of the comments that Kelly had made. I have not actually looked at
But I
them.
have one thing. I know we said we need to do a definition. Do we do that now or wait for the supervising OT
I like it. Let's do it now.
before we forget?
Yep. Thank you. We do have things like general supervision, yeah, but we don't have the term supervising OT, STU.
And I think since we're taking that that specific naming verification concept out of the application and renewal process, I guess we do need to say who we're talking about.
So the supervising occupational therapist is, the occupational therapist who, we can change this, I'm just writing something, who is, supervising and OTA,
Honestly, if you just pick up the language that you put in B or now the supervising physician is the person who is available in blah, 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 and is named noted in the chart or something like that.
yeah, okay. Oh, does anybody remember what page that was? Good boy. So now it's all green. I can't find it as easily. Here we go. Okay. It's the occupational therapist who is readily available to answer questions about the client's intervention at the time of services. Okay.
And possibly flesh it out a little bit, or, or who is, the referring OT for the patient's care or something like that, whatever the good terminology is. But it might not be,
Is who is for the session. This is not, I'm not writing, but I feel like the word responsible should go in there somehow.
yeah. And also maybe circle back to, and who performs the general supervision, whatever, where you were in general supervision.
Oh, yeah, the occupational therapist, providing general supervision and who is readily available to answer questions about the.
Does it need to be occupational therapist, practitioner?
Well, this is actually just the occupational therapist who's the one who's going to be providing it to an OTA. Because the OT practitioner imply both, but we're just talking about the OT. So the OT who is providing general supervision to an OTA and who is readily available to answer questions. Is readily available to answer questions about the client's intervention at the time of the provision of services. I'll read that and see what y'all think.
Am I going to make this more confusing if I say it's also providing supervision to a student?
Yeah, because we chose not to go.
Not to do that. Okay, that's,
Yeah.
I'm just, as reading this, it made me think of students. I didn't know. Okay.
Anybody have any changes to this?
I think, is OTA the right word, or?
Should I spell out occupational therapy assistant? I guess the abbreviations and things like that, I think, that Patricia's gonna be finding those.
Okay. I just didn't know if we needed to just depends on what's all in the document, but whether to say CODA or OTA. I don't guess you'd have to, because the certification is not mandatory in our state, right?
Right.
I mean, the renewal.
And we're not saying, the supervising occupational therapist, we're not saying the licensed occupational therapist.
Right, you're right.
Fine. Okay, if nobody has any other changes to this definition, we'll vote on this definition. Can I get someone to motion to approve this new definition for supervising occupational therapist?
I motion to approve this new definition for supervising occupational therapist. It's Kim.
Thank you. And a second?
I second it, Carolyn.
All in favor of adding this definition, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any public comment? Say that.
There's no public comment.
Okay, great. I'm going to share the screen now with, because believe it or not, that was like it. Kelly had gone through and found a few things that she wanted to bring up. Let's see. Where do I have those? This might be it. Are you guys now looking at an email from Kelly to me? Is that what
Yes.
I shared the screen with?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I think it's good for that somebody looked through all of it and that we just make sure that we've addressed everything. Kelly, was there any?
Some of it's been answered. I saw the direct supervision definition. I was looking
Okay.
on one screen at the time, and
All
I
right.
guess I was getting over the flu. But the first part about it was just another scenario of the temp permit. I don't know if it's necessary, but it does include people who are just awaiting results of the examination, not just waiting to take it. So I didn't know if we wanted to add that.
We don't have it written like that now.
I'm
Let's
going
see.
back and forth. It was. I think I copied it how it was written, where it said.
Let's see. Licensing is examination, temporary permit. Okay. Temporary with specify and creates.
It says and has applied for and waiting examination.
Yeah, I see. So that implies that if you're took it but still waiting for results, yeah.
I mean, waiting just implied that they haven't taken it yet. And I mean, I just want them, you do have the people that have taken it and are just waiting their results because of, they haven't graduated or whatever the reason. And then the other one was the 3 months and is non-renewable. And that is because of what it used to say that I was still kind of confused about. So is that temp permit valid for 3 months, even if they get their results back and they didn't pass? They still have the 3 months. Is that right?
Only
Correct.
3 months is what we discussed in the past.
Okay. So they can fail it after 1 month, but they still can work on that same temp license and don't have to reapply. Okay. Just making sure.
But if they don't pass the test at the end of 3 months, they can't get another temporary license.
Okay. So
It's actually a temporary permit.
All right.
Dr. Van, you called it a license.
I know. I'm as bad as everybody else.
Okay. And so we used to be able, and I'm sorry that I'm asking a question that y'all already talked about. I just want to make sure that I understand because they cannot reapply for a temp license anymore. They used to could do it one time, but not anymore, right?
It's one time, 3 months, no matter what happens. If you don't pass, and after 3 months, you don't have any ability to practice.
Okay. All righty. Okay. So that was that part. And I guess the other one, the direct supervision is defined. That was answered. The other one was just where I saw codas. That's the only place I saw codas written. Everywhere else, it just says OTAs.
Yeah, we would need to change that for consistency. I think Patricia will probably catch that stuff.
Okay. And then the next one was just grammatical, if I'm reading it correctly. If we use shall, it should be shall refer instead of shall refers.
Oh yeah, that is a grammatical error.
And then shall other professionals or services, or just
Let's see.
wasn't that plural professional?
I think it should be plural.
Oh, Lord, where are we? 4909. Where are you? 4909. Okay. Five. Okay. Okay, here we go. OTs shall recommend additional consultations or refer clients to appropriate resources when the needs of the client can best be served by the expertise of other professionals or services. All right.
Good eye, Kelly.
Well, you know that teaching okay. And then F, no, D, no F, sorry. Schools, again, apologize. Y'all already said this. Does this mean that in the school system, they don't need a doctor's referral for intervention anymore?
Yes.
Okay. So there's no doctor referral required in the school system at all.
That's what you all are recommending to the board.
Okay.
I can't promise what the board's going to do with it, but that's what you all are recommending.
Okay. And then the other one was in 4913, the intervention process. It in B, an OT ensures the intervention plan and any modifications are documented within the timeframes. An OTP collaborates with the client to develop and implement the intervention plan on the client's needs. Should there be a statement that the OTA contributes to the intervention plan development, or is that just the assumption of number 3? Because it
is the assumption of number 3.
All right, that's fine. I think it had it separately in the other 2 parts, which is why I was asking. It had like its own little, the OTA had its own little, or OTP, a different sentence. The other one was 4917, the discontinuation of services. Does that mean that the OTs can write the discharge summary, but OTAs, that the OTs are the only ones that can write the summary, but the OTAs can verbally collaborate on the plan?
That's what it would mean to me. I don't believe that was something we had changed. Wasn't that already in there? Let me see, 4917E.
I just remember this being a question. Some OTAs were being asked to write the discharge summary.
Is it a burden to write the discharge summary?
I'm not saying that. The way it's written, it sounds like they can't at all. They could collaborate, but not write it. or the way
Yeah,
I.
we didn't change this. It was already like that, you know, because it's black. So that
Mhm.
means that that's how it already was, and we didn't change it.
So is that y'all's interpretation? Is that the OTAs cannot write it?
That's my interpretation.
Okay. So when people ask me that, I'm going to say, no, you are not allowed to write it, only verbally collaborate.
That feels right to me. I don't know if Kathleen feels differently.
So what we normally do is I'm never the one doing like in-home health. I don't do discharges. Obviously the OT is going out there and doing the discharge. But like in the hospital setting, when I am with the OT every day, we talk about it to each other because we have a meeting every week about each patient. I'm in rehab, not acute care. And so I talk to the OT and say, hey, they're going to skilled nursing, or hey, they're going wherever they're going next, home, wherever. And so then I might write it in, but they're always signing off on that discharge anyway. So basically, I guess since they're having to sign off on the discharge, it's their final say so. I'm just writing it in, but they're co-signing every time, no matter what, to do a discharge.
Well, does anybody want to, is everyone okay with leaving this as the OT's responsibility? Should this be?
I agree it's their responsibility. It just says.
You just want to double check that that's what we meant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, because, you know, I just want to make sure I'm saying it right too. And I tell my students, like,
I guess it could get tricky if you're working in pediatrics and you see a kid for the last time and you're the coda doing the treatment, and next thing you know, kid never shows back up. But there's also other stuff in play where you're, you know, for whatever reason, maybe turning that kid into CPS because they're neglecting their Medicaid, the doctor's orders for coming in and doing OT, whatever. I guess you would probably have to put like a discharge blurb and say, hey, unknowingly, unbeknownst to me, the child's no longer coming back in. Family has not brought the child back. We've taken separate measures, you know, doing whatever, yada, yada, that we got to do. I mean, I've worked in a lot of different settings. It's very rare that I would have to do something of that nature without the OT coming back in. So I don't feel like it's a problem to keep it.
Yeah. And I don't know that any of them have ever said to me that I'm being asked to write this independently. It's been more like the OT said, write the summary and I'll sign off on it. But they really just didn't know if they were allowed to even write it. You know, I mean, so yeah, they are getting them signed. And it might not even matter but I just want to be sure I understand.
Supervision of the OT assistants, did we wind up covering that? Kelly?
I'm looking. Okay, the close client care supervision is in the definitions, but I don't see it anywhere in the document. You did answer my question about the general supervision, yes.
Okay.
But as far as the close client care, which is face to face,
Yeah,
is it used somewhere else and I just missed it?
Well,
I think we use direct supervision in place of that, maybe for the temporary permit holders. But I couldn't find close client care anywhere.
Y'all, where's my search button for this document?
I know. Okay, I just had to do this. Try review.
Oh, here it is. It's up at the top.
Okay. Mine went away just now too, and couldn't find it again.
Okay, close client care supervision. Is that what we were just saying?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think that's going to just search a document.
That's not searching my document.
Go up here to where it says, find. Do you see
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. That's what you have to use.
Under, you see where it says create PDF and share link?
Where it says no spacing, find. No.
Yeah, why can't find this. Hold on.
Okay.
Where are y'all looking? To the
What's your
right, to the left?
Go left a little bit. Go left.
Create PDF and share link. Fine.
There we
Yes.
There's the
Yeah.
word. There it is. Thank you. Close client care. Close client care supervision, is that the word?
Supervision. Yes.
All right. We have that here crossed out in the old definitions. Let's see what this is. That's crossed out. That's crossed out. No, we don't have it in the document anymore, Kelly.
Okay, good. It was in the one that I had for some reason.
Yeah, that's because there were more, what do you want to call them? Changes made.
Okay, perfect. Well, then that answers that. And then you've already talked about the supervision form. I asked if we were requiring that again. I got the documentation. Oh, is there a definition of non-skilled tasks? So it talks about what the OT aid.
Okay.
I mean, I know that there is an AOTA's definitions. I just didn't know if we needed it here or not.
I thought we did include it, but let's see. Or did we define it within the thing? Let's see here.
Maybe
We'll start here. Non-skilled task. Yeah, we did include it.
Okay, perfect. I didn't see it in mine for some reason.
All right.
That was it.
That was your whole form, huh, Kelly?
That was it.
Cool. Wow, we're done with our meeting early, y'all, unless
But
anybody
I have a
has.
question. Well, you added something, didn't you add or results or something? Do we need a vote on that? You added like a couple of words?
Yeah, now I don't remember where that was.
It was like the first thing that
It was under permits, licensing permit,
Yes.
temp license permit.
Do we need, is that something we need to vote on? I don't know.
Probably not for that.
Okay.
I don't.
All right. I just wanted to make sure. You just added 2 words, I think.
I think I just put or results. Yeah.
Okay. So we don't need to vote. Okay. I just want to make sure.
So those definitions, are they in 2 different places in the document?
No, we consolidated them to only one.
Oh.
We used to have them in 2 different places,
Okay,
but
good.
now they're only going to be one.
Perfect. So that non-skilled is not in the document that I have. It's in the one that you have.
Probably.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Darby sent me another one after I sent that out to y'all. She sent me another one that she had worked on.
Okay, good.
Well, if nobody has anything else, I think I'm going to be ready to create a clean version of this and send it to. I feel like we finished, y'all. I don't know what to do. And send it to Patricia and Dr. Van, and then we'll wait to hear back, get a version from them to go through with a fine-tooth comb. I mean, I will send this out for y'all to also look through with a fine-tooth comb. And you can let me know if there's anything that comes up, but I will be putting this together for Patricia to look at and sort of, I guess, formally handing it over and saying, this is it. And then we will keep our February meeting date, but if for any reason it turns out we don't need it, we'll cancel it. But let's keep our February meeting date, which is going to be February 23rd, 2024 at 10 o'clock in the morning. Is there any other public comment? Dr. Van?
Checking right now, and the answer to that question is there are no public comments at this time.
Okay, I think we can adjourn a whole hour and 3 minutes early.
You rock. English president forever.
We are adjourned at the meeting at 11:57 a.m. And I will see you guys next month.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thank y'all.
Appreciate all your hard work.